Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us. Today is our third live interview of Combermere Live, and our guest today is none other than one of Barbados's best cyclists, our very own Charlie Pyle. Thank you for joining us today, Charlie. How are you doing?
Hey, how are you doing? I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
I'm glad to see you here. I'm really good. Excited about this interview.
Well,
Um,
thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much.
you're welcome. I want to start out with what are your memories of growing up? And where were you growing up? Where were you born and you grew up? What area?
Okay. To my recollection, my I was born at a nursing home in Belleville. My parents at the time lived in Point Plantation Road, which is the I guess the north south road between Government Hill and Calimero. Um, and I was born to two parents who were in the teaching profession. And in my very young um, childhood, my father was promoted to the position of principal at a school. Right. My mother was a teacher and then a senior teacher. So my young days entailed being dragged to school initially with my mother as a fairly young child. You know, they didn't have daycares and stuff in those days. So you would go to school at a fairly young age and sit around or sleep around in the infants class while your mother was working. And then obviously my father started taking me to school with him when I got a little older, around 4.5 or so. My first school was Welch's Mix in St. Thomas, where he was assigned at the time. So we started going to school at that age. I can't tell you that I was really doing anything constructive, but I was attending school. He was then transferred to Black Bess in St. Peter,
Uh,
um, where we went there for about a year or two, and then my the majority of my primary school days was spent at Basketball Boys in St. Peter, where he
okay,
was appointed headmaster. So I did my part one and part two from Basketball.
okay. But what was your general life at home? Did you have brothers and sisters? And what was going on in your neighborhood?
No brothers, no sisters, but we had the neighbors next door, Donald and Cedric Robinson. We had people like Michael Marshall and Andy Pollard, who were also at Combermere, um, who lived in Point Gardens, which was just a track stone throw away from me. Um, in 5 minutes walk, I would be at Michael's house if I went through the track. 8 minutes if I went around the road. And basically, I spent most of my time in Point Gardens
Well,
with those two Combermereans. Then there was another one, another guy, David Gooding. He was at college, and then there were the Edwards boys and girls, Don and uh, Junior and Perry and Marlene, and we would hang around. We actually had we nicknamed ourselves Love Garden because we would put together these. Those were the days of the house parties. Remember the old fets,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
the free fets,
yeah.
and fet crashing. You remember those days? Right. Well, we would put on a fet, and it would usually be at the Edwards' house because they had the bigger entertainment area, the lawn, and all this kind of stuff. And we would at least have one fet every year. You
Okay.
know, to which the attendance would have been very very high. You had the crowd from Highgate Gardens coming down, and there was a good crowd that would come. You
Okay.
know, most
Good.
most of our secondary school peers would come,
So
and
we're
that
involved in that, Charlie. When did you get involved in cycling? Because I knew you got involved in cycling from a very early age. So you got
mhm.
involved in cycling before you came to Combermere, right?
No,
Oh
actually,
wow.
what it was at Combermere. Truth be said, I was a 100-meter runner with Barney Corby. Me and Barney were the two fastest in say F, right?
Yeah.
We used to run 100 meters.
Wow.
and I was running from primary school. Um, but I had a arch condition, basically flat feet. God
Okay.
knows how I got into the army with that, but I went through a long period of therapy with inserts and stuff to support the arch, you know.
Yeah.
So the training necessary for running was sometimes painful, causing a lot of swelling and stuff. And I remember my physiotherapist said one day, listen, find another sport, my man. This is gonna cause you some problems. So one day I was sitting. So when I first went to Combermere, I was running. I was still running for the F and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, Noah Lynch, um, the ambassador now in the CS, he was at Lodge and he was the kingpin at Lodge.
Yes, I remember that.
And it was always a matter of either me or Barney had to beat him. You
Yeah.
know, he was the mark to beat.
Yeah.
And we always hassled each other even into adult life about that. But having been told I had to find another sport, I was sitting on my gallery one day, man, and these cyclists, remember them? I remember one being Michael Soap, came out from Point Hill and turned south on Point Plantation Road, which means that they passed right by my house, and they went, my lord, them look pretty, you know. I said, boy, I want to do that.
Hmm.
No, my parents weren't into like um, sports and stuff. They were like do your academics and stuff like that. So I had to really call Fox them into getting me my first bike. I couldn't even ride a bicycle properly.
Wow.
Right? Michael Marshall's sister Heather taught me how to ride a bicycle. Right? I used to ride there. I learned to ride on their Manhattans, and we would ride around on Manhattans along with we used to call him Kaki Foos, a guy called Skeet. Um, Ricardo Skeet, I think his first name was. He's a teacher. No, but he was in those days that had the boppers, you know,
Yes, I remember them.
and the bicycles used to be pretty, pretty, pretty.
Yeah,
So
Dry Peas and the Fox and them guys. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
so we started riding around with them and stuff like that, and I learned to ride, and then I got my first racing bike, a Carlton Cobra, and I met some fellas. As a matter of fact, a fella called Brantley Nelson, who was older, that lived down my same avenue. He was living in the States and he started riding in the States at that kind of US level. So when he came back, he passed by the house one day going training. He said, man, why don't you come and ride with us, you know? So that's how we started cycling. First ride I went on, we met there at the corner of the Boer Road, Cashington College,
Yeah.
and make it the Ben Factory. Man, getting at that hell, the man fuzzed me and the man was going to River Bay.
Wow.
So I didn't particularly know the roads all that hard. I knew that road because I was going to basketball every day for many years, so I knew that
Mhm.
road. But I got fed up and I turned back and came home, right? But I continued and I got stronger and stronger. And, I was actually given permission to go and ride on a weekend, but not during the week because I had homework to do. And the deal was I would ride the road, but I wouldn't ride the track, right? But I like the track. So a day I tell him that my parents and thing, I get on the road, I get on the road, you know? And I go onto the track and I borrow a fella bicycle my they're riding. And to my surprise, one day coming around and I see my father up on the railing looking at me. He said, well, well, well. I thought he was again ready track. Before he got buy two bicycles again, buy you a track bike. Right? He was of your opinion if I go on my shit, the fella bicycle, he got buy back the fella bicycle,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
still got
yeah.
buy
I
the
still
one.
buy you another one. Yeah.
So that's how I got my first track bike. And I started to race. I was at Combermere then. And there was a big conflict in my mind because there was cadets, there was hockey, um, and these things sort of conflicted. Cycling is a very jealous sport,
Yeah.
right? So I had to start to slip away and ease back from a lot of the other activities when I started to get more serious about cycling.
Okay. Wow. But I knew that you went to Junior Worlds at the age of 13. So can you just delve into that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I think At that time, the Union Cycliste Internationale, which is the official cycling organization that governs both amateur, well, governs cycling. Back in those days, it was amateur and professional cycling. Um, I think that was either the inaugural, I think it was the inaugural Junior World Championships for cycling. And the rules were quite different then. You know, you had to be under 18. That was the rule. And myself and Richard Ruitt were the two. Sorry, not Richard. Alan. Richard was at Combermere with us too, with Mark Goddard. All these guys were cyclists. But Alan was I think Alan was at Harson's College. Alan and I were the two youngest people riding at that time, because at that time cycling was a more of a mature sport. So we were the only two people that qualified to go to these games. So they decided they would send me first, and then they would send me first to Munich in Germany, and then they would send Alan the next year to Warsaw, Poland. And that did happen. So my first international outing, I was a high 13. I was almost 14, was Junior Worlds. Since then, of course, the rules have changed. I mean, we were disadvantaged back then, because if you go in at 14, you sometimes had to ride against guys that were 18. And there was a significant difference between a 14-year-old and an 18-year-old, right? So then the UCI started to restrict that gap and made sure that to ride Junior Worlds, you had to be between 17 and 18. So it's only a year gap now. But back then, you could have ridden Junior Worlds at a very young age. Mm-hmm.
All right. I do have a guest that has wants to say a couple of words to you. I know you were involved with cycling, but I knew you did a little bit of karate. So we have a special guest that we want to bring on right now. And welcome to Cicely Lawrence.
Hi, Cicely.
Can you hear us, Cicely? We can't hear you. You got to be on mute, I think. You may be on mute, Cicely. And welcome all the viewers.
You know, why am I on there twice?
Oh, no, we can see you.
Oh. So, yeah, I was at Combermere with Charlie. Charlie and I did not take the same classes. I took French and English. I believe Charlie, what did you take? History?
Geography and history, yeah.
So we were
geography and history.
We were not in class together. We did karate together, and we were great friends. Charlie is a generous, very generous soul. But I did conduct a live interview here before I came on and learned of some shenanigans Charlie and his fellow geography and history classmates took place in, that I, being a good student, did not take place in. I did not cut class and go down Bathsheba with them. Running races on the beach and the like. Charlie?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you attest to the fact that I was not down Bathsheba with you all?
You were not down Bathsheba with us. That I believe that would have been people like Mary and Roseanne.
I am not calling any names.
but Cicely, the statute of limitations has run out on that. You're not going to get detention or cane?
True. About civil liabilities and stuff like that, though.
Okay.
And I understand that there was quite a high stress situation at one point when the car broke down. Charlie's car broke down.
My aunt's car, actually.
Okay.
Yes.
Now there's auto theft involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yes. Going to the movies while I was in class. Okay, going to the 12 o'clock films and stuff like that. I didn't even know there was such a thing.
12:30.
You 12:30s.
It's 12:30.
Okay, so I guess you were part of it too. You know about that.
Well, you at that time, karate and thing was big.
It was the Kung Fu picture. It was the Kung Fu pictures. I must admit, it did help me with my cutters and stuff like that. Huh? It put me in the mindset, you
Oh,
know.
yeah. That's why you kept it secret. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I was shocked to learn of these shenanigans, as I said, and thought that I should come on
Mhm.
and, I don't know, inform the public.
But I don't think that this is called shenanigans. We call this enjoying your boy days.
Okay, so where I come from is called cutting class.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It was technically cutting class because actually these, you know, by that time we were in sixth form and there was study periods. Um, you know, I cannot remember ever really cutting an official class to do something extracurricular. It would always obviously be in the evening, which was practically always study period. We were supposed to be in the library. Um, up close to Wisdom Board Company, you know, the buildings separated across the pasture. We were supposed to go over there and study, or go to, or go home and go to UE or go to the library or something and study. So we would just duck that study part and go and enjoy some kung fu.
okay, well, guess what? I'm hearing here, I have a participant live right next to me.
Who is that participant?
I'm not going to name any names. If she wants to shout, if he wants to shout her name out, you know. But I understand that one, Jebut Singh, warn you guys about, and so, uh, I mean, I'm not going to say much more, but you're claiming that no classes were ever cut. You have a participant here who is like, nah, not agreeing with that. And also, why would Jebut Singh warn you guys if there was no cutting class involved?
I can't remember cutting class, but if one of the one of my cohorts remembers cutting class, if it did happen, it would not have been a habit. It would have been, and certainly it wouldn't have gone on after Mrs. Sheville Singh had warned us.
All right, good catch.
Yeah, but those were really fun days at Combermere.
For the best days.
They were really great, lifelong friendships. You know, we had different activities. The two of us were into karate. We would train together sometimes, etc. Um, and like some of the other girls, they were in the cadets, and we would go as far as I think we were at the St. Vincent camp together. And if I remember correctly, that crow was the first set of female cadets in Barbados. As if I'm speaking subject to correction, but I believe so. I believe they were
Yes,
the
I think they
first.
were. And Margot
First
Green was
female cadet.
officially the first female cadet, I think,
Margot was the first.
In the Caribbean.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, they were those girls were history makers, not only by joining what was previously an all boys school,
Yes,
but
but there were five of them, and that group was the first female cadets, not only here but in the Caribbean.
in the
Yeah.
Caribbean, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was Margot Green, it was Marlene Sivers, Rosa Jones at the time, Gribble, um, Sandra Paris. I think Angela Amy was one for what? Yeah, Angela Amy was in the cadets,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
That's
Yes.
five.
Yeah.
I think that was it, if I remember correctly. Those
Yeah.
were the first
And
girls.
additionally, Charlie, remember too, you and I were both in the cadet band.
Yep,
So
yep,
yeah. So
yep.
tell people the instrument that you played.
I was the bugler. I was usually the duty bugler. I used to play the last post, bring down the flag,
Yes.
um, play the I guess the rhythm, not the rhythm, but the main course in the route marches. We
Yeah.
had several route marches, which which I must admit were sometimes difficult for me because of the same arch problem.
Mhm.
And cadet boots weren't the most comfortable. That they were the leather boots back then. They weren't these nice new Gore-Tex combat boots that they have now.
Yeah.
And the first one was to Portland. Portland is the one there's Portville and there's Portland. We went to Portland, which is the one on the St. James Coast.
Yes.
And the second one was the Buckleys. And then they had one and they were all started at Combermere. And then the last one was the Bath.
Mm-hmm.
But we stopped in St. John at a plantation overnight.
I remember that.
And then march the next morning, completed the march down to Bath. And
Yes.
Bath that was a real cool march because I think we spent the weekend down there, right?
Yes, we had to build our own shelter and stuff like that.
Yeah. And it was
I remember
cool
the rain pouring coming down, Charlie, and we get soaked.
Yeah. But those were very good days, and they really instilled a lot of camaraderie and discipline and stuff, and most of all determination. Because, like I was saying, in my case, they would have been a challenge with that kind of walking at that stage in my life.
Yes.
Right. However, for some reason, it seemed to rectify itself because by the time I actually got into BDF and did commando training, which entailed significantly more running, everything ranging from 6 miles to 30 miles, I didn't have any problems with my feet at that stage. Wow. So it seemed to have corrected itself over the years.
Mm-hmm. Now I have another question for you, and I don't think that Cicely might have been involved in this, but we will find out shortly. Did you ever receive a caning from Bumpy at school, and for what reason?
Yes, I received a caning from Bumpy. Mr. Moore, Mr. DeVere Moore. Let's be respectful to our principals.
Mr. Moore, sorry.
Mr. Moore, right. I got caned on an allegation. There was a gentleman called Mr. Chapman who was teaching us English in Lower Wansea. So this would have been before me and Cicely met. He gave us a composition to write. I went home. I spent the whole weekend writing this composition. I brought it back. Mr. Jackman said, "You didn't write this composition. That is tantamount to cheating." Right?
Mm-hmm. And
gave me a note to take to Mr. Moore. And master asked no questions. He just said, "Bend over." Man, the smoke rose from my pants, man.
Well,
man, I felt very badly about it because I don't mind being punished for something that I have done, but he did not believe that I sat down and wrote the composition because knowing that my parents were teachers, he thought that they had written it for me.
Oh, wow. It was probably so well done.
I don't know. I guess the way it was structured because I used to write like a framework first and then I would fill in the spaces. But when I told my dad about it, he was furious, man. And he actually called Mr. Moore, but you can't take back a caning, my man. So that was my first and only experience with a caning.
Yes. So I bet, Cicely, you never experienced anything of that nature.
No.
You kind of sound a little hesitant, because I know they used to beat the girls. They used to make them put out the hand and take a couple licks.
No, I was never corporal punishment for me.
Okay.
And I'm even, it's funny because I'm surprised to hear that, but I guess back then, I'm surprised to hear that, as recently as when, Charlie was in first form, that, he would have been caned.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Caning was a serious thing back then. We mainly used to get detention and lines, I actually I started my entrepreneurial journey. Back then, I had books and books of lines written out saying I shall not talk in class or you do not talk in class. All the set forms that were given to write lines, I had them written out, and then I would sell them 10 cents a page.
Yes.
Wow. Right. So when somebody got lines, in my spirit, I would just write lines.
Yeah.
And if
you was
proactive. Somebody get hold for 100 lines, they say, okay, that's 30 cents, then you got 100 lines.
Yeah. So while at Combermere, can you give us some names of people that you became good friends with? Because I think we have one of your friends here right now in studio. Is Peter Earl.
Yeah, Peter. Yeah, me and Peter were at school together, um, and of course our relationship became closer after we left school, um, and we got into some business enterprises together. Um, but Peter's a dear friend. We go back to school. I can't remember ever getting into any particular trouble with him at school.
No,
But
Peter was a very quiet, reserved
Peter was
young
a
man.
quiet, good
Yes,
behaved boy. I was
yes,
one of these borderline fellas.
yes.
You know?
Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Yes,
Yeah,
nice to have you here.
when I heard Cicely talk about Charlie getting away from school, I wonder how that was possible because Charlie's father was a disciplinarian.
Hmm.
I always saw him as a very strict person. I'll tell you, when I did O levels, his father was an invigilator at the school, and during the end of the exam, you remember you had these pieces of cord that you had to tie the papers with. But those of us who were able to needed to use extra paper had to tie them together. And for some reason, my hands were trembling. And his father looked at me and said, Sonny, telling me the truth. You just hit the bottle. I mean, I was in fifth form. I didn't know I was not one of those guys who would drink rum or anything at school, but there was his father was telling me that, you know. But when I remember Charlie from school because we waited for our parents to collect us on evenings after school, and that is the time when we would get to talk. People like David Thompson he was a little boy, but he would talk more than any one of us, more
Yeah.
than people like Benji Forbes used to be there, Nichols, Michael Scantlebury, um, Paul Cox, people like the
He's a
Ennis
doctor now
brothers.
in Canada, Michael.
Who, yes,
Michael Canterbury, yeah.
right, and the Ennis brothers, Edison and his younger brother. But I remember Charlie is somebody with a very strong walk and a lot of confidence. He talked a lot. He seemed to know everything about everything, and he was always talking about interesting things. I remember him being in the cadets, and
Yeah,
of course I participated in those two route marches. One was to Porters,
yeah,
and the other was to the factory in Saint Joseph. I remember the Porters one very well because um, I remember some girls followed us from Cave Hill, and those days they didn't have any street lights between Cave Hill, the board road, and Combermere.
yeah.
And these girls followed us all the way to Combermere, and then asked if we could escort them back home. And those days, I mean, our feet were so sore. The only thing we could do is to try and get home and be able to come back the next day. The other route march to St. Joseph, can't remember the name of the factory.
For a state.
Lower State, I think it was.
No, not Lower State. This was to a factory in St. Joseph, because we walked to Barclays Park and we camped overnight. We camped overnight at
Hmm.
that thing. And I remember um, um, Maynard, Dr. Maynard telling us and Patrick Skeet, listen, try and put together a tent. And we said, look, it's not going to rain. Anything, nothing like that's going to happen. We refused to put the tent up, and the rain fell. We had to hurry and put together a tent. And the tent was so small that our feet jutted out of the tent. And our feet got soaked all while it was raining,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
But that was quite an experience because I remember the people in the area felt that we had loaded guns and they were
Yeah.
quite fascinated
Yeah,
fascinated with us. But I remember Charlie doing some karate, wearing a white outfit.
The gi.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and right into school. You're one of these guys who rode to school with some other guys from Christchurch, etc.
Andrew Rodriguez, Roger Thorpe, all them fellas. We were in the basic same area.
Yeah,
We would work together, work to school together.
yeah.
Good.
They were all older than I was, but we would ride to school together. But my main reason for riding to school is that I could get home quickly. Because we would finish school at 3:15, usually leave by 3, and I would have to get home and do a few things to go and meet the guys for training by for 15 or so when they get off work.
So how did you get away from your father and was able to attend cinema during school hours?
My Peter, my father at school teaching during that time.
You know going on.
And by that time, I had a stage where he don't have to pick me up from school. I get home on myself. Me and Larry Mears walk home. Me and Arnold Giddens that just died the other day. We used to walk home together, because both of them lived in the Government Hill area, so I just had to walk through the truck and they was home.
Yeah.
Right.
Peter, you said that you have a hard time picturing him, going off the school grounds and going to the movie.
Yeah.
Well, can I suggest that there was a strong kind of like incentive?
What was that incentive?
All the girls.
Oh, well, that's not a surprise, especially knowing Charlie now.
Earlier, and I'm going to quote, I don't know how so many of us were able to hold into that little car. That's what I'm quoting here. It was a pile of girls.
Yeah. Well, at that age, we were all full of testosterone, right? So those things would just happen logically, and you know what I mean? So, Charlie, while you were at school, I wanted to get into this. When you got into Combermere, as I did, right? You remember you couldn't go up on the 3rd floor. You had these big boys and things. So who did you look up to? Who did you want to emulate? And who were people that, you wanted to say, I want to be like this person? Because when I got to Combermere, like one of your friends there, Barney, I admired Barney. Barney walked with a swagger. He dressed a certain way. He had his tie down a certain way. He played soccer really well. Neil Haynes was a good cricketer. Neil played hockey. Neil was in everything. Neil was in the cadets with us.
Yeah,
who did you look up to?
Well, to be honest, when I first got there, the boys you would look up to were like the very senior fellas. Colonel Brown, Trevor Brown.
Yes.
Charlie Bell.
Yes.
And I think he was our first Barbados color guy. I think his name was Keith. The first Barbados color that Combermere ever got. He was a CSUO. Right?
Yeah.
He was the first CSUO that we had. So I used to look up to them guys, I used to look up to Charlie Bell and stuff, Chester Foster, and many a Saturday, I up at 5:30, 5:45 to ride bicycle to the Combermere to shoot in the morning.
Yeah.
With Chester Foster and Charlie Bell. And when I think of the responsibility, you got people like Chester Foster and Charlie Bell running the range, using light ammunition and shooting. And there was no senior supervision,
Yes.
Just these guys. And we did it quite safely and quite efficiently. Accompanied for rounds, collected our brass and everything, and went home after.
But listen, you remember they had a cadet named Zach. You'll know this, Peter.
Yes.
The range.
You can't forget Zach.
They had somebody in the neighborhood that used to have some sheep and things grazing on the side. And Zach shoot one of the people's sheep. You remember that one?
I don't remember that. I remember Zach running one of the guys from Combermere to Jackson.
Yeah.
Right across the Bow Road.
Yeah. That was one of the biggest fights in Combermere history.
Yes.
Right? Yes. But yeah. So those were good times. Now, as you got into the cadets, right? Your life evolved after you left Combermere. How did you get into the regiment and the UN? How did that flow?
Well, hold a second. Why am I getting a low battery?
Oh boy. Because you're not plugged in.
Oh, I'm plugged in now. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, the switch went off for some reason. Don't know why.
You may have got some lights for me.
No, I don't know if you want to start pulling up this slideshow because it should be in the background
Okay.
as we talk about these things.
All right. So we shall start this slideshow.
Yeah,
And
we should start the slideshow.
okay. So let's bring on the slideshow.
Well, basically, what happened was when I left Combermere, I went to university in the States, obviously,
Hmm.
and I came back um, with a degree in business and economics, and I started working uh, for what is now Massey Technologies. It was Caribbean Computer Systems back then, as a system programmer, just writing code for food and beverage management systems. I moved from there into my first management position. I was only there like a year and a half, and I was offered a position at the time to get his grant as the manager of commercial services. Commercial services was like what other companies use now, shared services, where you service a number of various departments of the organization, with accounting, billing, and this kind of stuff. Um, so the very first run Barbados was a T Getty's Grant initiative. It was eventually handed over to whoever runs it now, whether it be the Board of Tourism or one of the other government pseudo organizations run Barbados series now. But it was a corporate initiative started by Mr. Bruce Bailey, and he sort of like just said, "You got the athletic experience and stuff. You coordinate this thing." So my easiest way to coordinate it was to go where no logistics existed. Logistics was turnkey. It was there just to be tapped on. And for me, that was BDF. So I went to he was Major Maynard at the time. And we had a discussion about this, and some officers were assigned to help me with this thing. And my main thing really was to get the marshals, the feeding stations, and the showers. So when everything was finished and it was successful, um, that I will use his retirement right, which is Colonel Maynard, who was also one of my mentors at school. Huh? He suggested that I perhaps come into the defense force. And I told him, well, I already have an investment in the commercial side of things. He said, no, you can come as a reserve, and you can come as an officer candidate. So I did that. Ended up in the BDF. Um, as it turned out, the there was some restructuring done at Getty's Grant, and I opted to take a package. And within less than a week, or less than 2 weeks, I had converted from reserve to regular, or reserve to full time. I was not regular. I changed from reserve to full time. Right, I was a reserve working full time, and the thing was to help with the computerization that was going on at the time. Myself and Major Gittins, who was the IT manager at TF Shepherd at the time, we were supposed to help with this thing, but the project lagged and lagged and lagged, and I ended up doing things like the Commando course and PCBC in Jamaica and all kind of combat oriented things, which basically trained me up to be an instructor. So that's how I ended up being the officer in charge of the training unit, and that was a very it sounds like a very prestigious post, right, for a junior person. But there was a senior warrant officer from the Royal Marines here, Bernie Wells, and he was basically the man in charge. And then they had other um, senior NCOs in charge, but there's supposed to be an officer in there, I suppose, and they put me as the officer because I was fit and was able to run about with the men and all this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So for a long time, I was in there, um, and you hone your skills because you're training people all the time in combat skills. So obviously, you learn them very very well. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So how did you transition from the Barbados Regiment, Defense Force, whatever, into the UN? Tell us that piece of the puzzle. How did you get from Barbados now that you're now working in Kosovo and that place?
well, to be honest, um, I do not know how I saw this ad, or if somebody told me about it. But UNDP advertised for admin and finance officer. And when I became aware of the situation, um, it was the day after the applications are closed, I believed, or it was the day the applications were closing. But I spoke to an officer there, cold call, didn't know the person, cold call, and she told me bring in the application. So I did, and there were only 3 applicants that they seriously considered. They broke it down to 2. I was chosen because I was basically almost immediately available, and they wanted somebody immediately. So I joined UNDP as an administrative person, but I was like the logs officer, the logistics officer for the first states conference, the UNDP side. So we did a lot of liaising with the then minister, Mr. Harcourt Lewis, in setting up the Lloyd Erskine Sandyford, because the Lloyd Erskine Sandyford was made for that first UN conference. Really, it was supposed to be. There was a lot of talk about that becoming UN headquarters after the conference, but it never did. UN went and built their own headquarters at Marine House, because at that time it was done in the old General Hospital, which subsequently burned down. So, working with this conference and all the big boys that came in, Secretary General himself, Boutros Ghali at the time came in, the head of security, who was the Assistant Secretary General, came in. I met him. He seemed to like the work that I was doing in relation to this conference, and he decided um, he would send me on a mission because he saw a mission as career advancement. And he told me, "Boy, take the mission. You know, refusing the mission is career suicide." I didn't particularly want to go because I just had my son was no just a little baby, you know,
Mhm.
and my parents were getting up in age and stuff. I didn't particularly want to leave Barbados to go anywhere for any prolonged period of time.
Mhm. And where
Um,
was that first mission going to send you?
the first mission was going to send me to Cambodia,
And for
but
how long? Okay, you were going to Cambodia. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to Cambodia, but the Khmer Rouge massacred the whole mission, and the
Wow.
mission was closed down. So that mission that I was slated for became a null and void mission. I was sent to um, the Yugoslavia Theater of Operations, which was basically Serbia, Bosnia, Croatia, Macedonia, Kosovo. So you could end up. There were separate missions, but it was one theater of operation,
Hmm.
and you could most likely get shifted. And
And the length of that mission was going to be what?
well, I was told the length of the mission was going to be 6 months. I should
Okay.
take it as a career move and come back.
Hmm.
I only went because I thought it was going to be 6 months. But that
And
six
how
months
long,
turned
in fact, did those missions turn out to be?
those missions turned out to be 10 years.
Wow. What sort of action did you see, Charlie? Were you actively
But
involved in?
we were. Well, Zagreb was relatively peaceful. The only encounter that ever happened in Zagreb, which was not even close to our headquarters, was when the Serbs shelled the ballet and damaged quite some world-renowned ballerinas and ballet dancers. But in Bosnia, you were in a hot zone. We used to get shelled regularly. I mean, they would shell the air base as a matter of harassment. You know.
Mhm.
Um, so you got accustomed in Bosnia. It was in Tuzla. It was an active war zone. You know,
Mhm.
so you got accustomed to taking your precautions and everything. My role in there was basically a treasury agent. I used to move the funding from our capital deposits into the areas of operation to pay for all the logistics and stuff like that. And that was That was basically one of the most highly classified operations in those theaters because we would be traveling with quite a bit of money.
Okay.
So the main thing was to be very, 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 very covert. I mean, I would know, but all people concerned would only be informed maybe 15 minutes before an assignment. They were always on. They were always on 30-minute notice to move. So you would give them 10 minutes. Not that you don't trust them, but there's a fair amount of moving parts in these things, and you don't really want issues. People would do a lot of crap for $10 million US, and that was about the size of our drops, 4 drops a month. So you moving a substantial amount of money many months come. So you would either be. It was mostly very very low key on the cover soft skin vehicle operations, and occasionally it would be a very hard over armored vehicle overhead support kind of thing, type thing. But you know, I didn't have a combat role. I just had to move through combat areas sometimes, so you had to be careful. But I had a very strong administrative and security role.
But you carried a gun during those missions, though.
Yeah, we carried firearms and body armor.
Mm.
Mhm.
If you can bring, I mean, if this like sure has in these things, sure
Yeah.
be cute on this, and just you will see some of the pictures of of well, that's BDF there. The next one, the next slide,
Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah.
right? There's a couple there. That one in the middle is one of those military transport um, assignments where we were actually moving funding, and that was one of the more um, overt ones in that we had on uniform. Normally, we will have on civilian gear and on marked vehicles, but that was uniform with a marked vehicle. And the other one is like the very overt ones where you have armor and stuff, and it was usually either Canadian or Norwegian armor. Um, and we would carry the funding in an armored vehicle with a lot of protection, or in a soft skin vehicle looking very nonchalant, where nobody would suspect that you're moving that kind of money in such an unprotected type detail, right? Um, and the first one would obviously being like in the office, just um, probably getting ready to go to a meeting or something, if I remember correctly.
Was there any time, Charlie, you almost you thought that you were not going to make it?
Not from a combat type situation, but we had a couple of operational situations.
Mm.
One being a vehicle accident, um, where again it was a money run. It was being done with Czech troops,
Mm.
and it was horrendous conditions. It was winter. It was foggy. It was icy, and they were driving too fast. But
Mm.
as much as they tried to tell them to slow down, they were saying, "Sir, it's like this is the anti-ambush speed and all this kind of stuff." Because we were actually going across what they call no man's land, disputed territory. Nobody used to go out there, you know. But it was the shortest way from point A to point B,
Mm.
and the vehicle in front saw an anomaly in the road, assumed it was a IED, swerved. The vehicle I was in, which was an armored vehicle, and not built for performance, also did a swerve, but it was top heavy, so it started to tilt and it turned over. And we ended up with some injuries. Um, I realized very quickly how marked and monitored we were, because apparently there's a piece of equipment on the top called a capsat that would emit this blip. When this blip stopped being emitted, a response team was there very, very quickly. Um, we were medevac then. I had to deal with some injury to the neck and some glass and stuff that came out, but we were able to actually secure the funds Um, and the other one, all were related to these money drops. Sometimes the money drops were by helicopter. Um, Bell to 12s, I believe, and we were doing a trip from Split back to Tulsa one day again winter, and it was again horrible conditions. And these guys were flying by the way they were flying, basically by visual observation, and it was not very good for visual observation. So they ended up doing a whole bunch of circling to the point where the aircraft started to get very fumy. In other words, we were out of fuel, and we didn't even know where we were. Uh, but it was very fortunate. We ended up breaking out of the cloud, and I realized, hey, we're over Lake Kislyak. So if we're over Lake Kislyak, we're within 20 kilometers of base, so we can make it for 10 kilometers. And then we radioed and asked the airport to just flash the red light so we could see. And that's how we made it back. But everybody was there with him when these helicopters landed, because when the engineers opened the tank, it was like, whoa, you can't
No,
believe that we got back here.
Charlie, what was the most amount of money that you ever transported at one time?
Probably about 9.3 million.
And that's US dollars.
That's the US component. I used to get money in US and in Deutschmark. It was the first time in my life I ever experienced a country that did not trust or like US dollars. A US dollar was worth crap in Bosnia. In fact, Yugoslavia just didn't like spending US dollars. The big money back there, everybody wanted to be paid in Deutschmarks at the time before we changed to euro. Because the change to euro came while I was there during my tenure. So it would be like most of it used to be. You would get about 9 million in US, and then you would get another million or so in Deutschmark, because the principal purchases were done in US. So that's where the US component was a little heavier. But yeah, on average, 3 times a week, on average, 8 million per shot mixed currency.
Okay. Well, okay. We just want to find out from you, who were your mentors at Combermere in terms of teachers or anyone else that made an impact on your life while you were there?
That's very easy. We'll start off with Indy Lower School, Mr. Harry Seeley.
Yes.
Mr. Harry Seeley was like a father.
To most of us. To most of us.
Them.
Yes.
All of the teachers were like fathers and parents, Mr. Seeley explained a lot of mathematical challenges that I had at the time and made them look so simple and made me feel so stupid. Boy, didn't I see this before? He would make things very, very, very simple. And he made me begin to love math and see the logic in math, which was a lot easier than English or anything else. Math was simple once you learn the rules, etc. As I went through the school, Mr. Carl Broodhagen, he was my boxing instructor at school. He was also the art teacher.
Yes.
I was never into sculpting. I couldn't deal with the sculpting. We did a few exercises with clay, but basically it was art for me, and learning how to draw still form and how to draw panoramic views, etc. And of course the boxing.
Yes.
And of course me and Mr. Broodhagen got closer after I left school. We had some meetings and stuff after we left school. And he in fact helped me tremendously with an assignment that I had from the military. Subsequently, moving into that military scene, both from school as a teacher, and then in the military as my senior officer and indeed the chief of staff. Colonel Maynard was always somebody that very, very strict person, but very fair and very supportive and very encouraging. Yes. And we obviously got closest through hockey. I had a little episode in hockey where I was the goalkeeper, which was the easiest position on the field. You know, all you had to say was show. All you had to be able to do was show, move real low, and get the ball over the D. You know, but hockey practice was very intense, and Colonel Maynard was in charge of that. We would have developed that closeness that is developed between team and coach. I guess he was a coach, but you know, it's hard to describe Colonel Maynard. He was like a coach, a friend, a teacher, everything. You know.
Yes.
Yes. And then obviously when we went into the military, he became the chief of staff while I was in the military. And there was one occasion where we had to visit President Anwar Carlos Perez in Venezuela, an official visit. And Colonel Maynard requested that I attend this deployment with him. I by this time was speaking Spanish fairly fluently, so it wasn't too much of a hassle. I didn't have too much of a fear, other than the fact that my vocabulary would have been social and cycling, because having, you know, been in South America a lot and racing a lot in South America, having ridden on a Spanish team, etc., having a Spanish coach, you know, you learn certain things. And actually having lived in Mexico for a year and Spain for quite a few months, you know, you were in immersion and you learn these things. So my only challenge was the diplomatic language. You know, I felt a bit of not qualified to handle the protocols, etc. So what happened was I was assigned to the Venezuelan embassy for a little bit. To go and learn their military customs, you know, things like which side you sit on, this kind of thing, which actually differed from how we did it. And we went to Venezuela together and spent quite a decent and how should I say it, productive exercise it was. So that's Colonel Maynard. You know, then there was people like Mrs. Jabot Singh and Mrs. Laurier. Of course, there was I can't say my namesake. I was her namesake. Of course, she's older than me. The eventual headmistress, Mrs. Pyle. These are people that I spoke with quite regularly at school, and even after I left school, you know, I couldn't think of anything else but calling them sir or ma'am. You know, Mrs. Hickson, Pamela Hickson, taught English. Yeah, these are the people that I really related to at school.
Good. Now, you seems that discipline has always been a part of your life, from your parents being teachers. Obviously, discipline. You came to Combermere with the cadets. You went into the regiment. You went into the UN, and so it seems discipline and structure are part of you and built in you. What are your future plans and anything to do with, obviously, I know you're going to be quite disciplined, whatever you do. So what are your future plans and what you're going to do?
But I'm basically retired. But I do run, you know, I'm not the kind of person that can sit around and just watch TV all day or be idle. So I do have a consultancy that we service a few clients, mostly international. I do a bit of work for project work for the international organizations, mainly to do with climate change and projects to do with climate change. And basically, our main activity is commercial air operations for drones, and this is pretty much focused on technical top areas, technical spaces like solar inspections, precision agriculture, highway security, this kind of thing.
Okay.
Oh,
Charlie, how did you get involved in drones?
I got involved with drones as a side effect of the production company that we started years before. I had a social and business partner um, who was into media and data management, and she sort of like said, "Hey, we need to start our own company and start working for people. We need to start our own company and relax." And so said so done. She was the main push behind it, and it was a film production company, and we did a lot of work for CMC and a couple of things for CBC and stuff. We did some stuff for again international organizations, some NGOs in the states. Did some filming. First virtual filming that we ever did was in Uganda. In the producing a documentary there. Never left the shores of Barbados to do it. Everything was done virtually, and she was actually the person that introduced me to Zoom. Zoom was unheard of back then. Zoom became popular during COVID, but back then, I mean, this is like 2014. We using Zoom. 2015.
Yeah.
When it was an initial platform. Um, but one of the main things that we covered was dynamic sports, the Soul Rally, the all the cycling events that took place in Barbados, all the cycling events that took place in Latin America and stuff, where we attended, and we would do the coverage in English for basically Caribbean, and it became feasible and sensible and prudent to have an air asset that could one follow things like cycling racing and car racing, because well, more so cycling, but car racing was a little difficult unless you're dealing with special stages, um, because of the speed of the cars. But cycling was easily followed by a drone. And we had a network developed that the drone would transmit back to a station. Excuse me, and we would have switchers, and we could switch from. We had a multi-camera simulcast system set up. That's how we got into drones, and then obviously the ability to use drones for security and public safety came into being. Started doing some work before the security forces here got their own assets. We had assets a long time, and we would do things like crop over, overwatch, surveillance. Other drone operators would do the filming, but I would be doing the surveillance and the security. So the surveillance for security purposes, and this was feedback to a central monitoring station that the Barbados Police Service would be monitoring. So that's basically how we got into drones. But back then, I mean, drone technology has changed so much, and they are now able to do so many sophisticated things. We switched into some very narrow niches. Which deal with strictly commercial stuff.
Okay. But Charlie boy, time is flown by so quickly. You're still there? Something, yeah. And I just wanted to thank you very much for taking the time to come on, and we can learn a little bit more about you outside of being a cyclist, and find out things like you skipped school and went to 12:30. So we're gonna have to we're gonna have to put you in detention, or like you put yourself in detention because you disappear off the screen. So thank you very much, Peter and
Thanks.
Cecily, for joining us
Sure.
in this short little interview
my
we had
pleasure.
with Charlie.
It was a pleasure.
Yes, sir.
Did I drop out there just now?
Yes, yes, I thought you put yourself in detention.
No, what happened was I got an alarm that seemed to, I hope it doesn't come on again.
Yes, so we just had to wrap up because the time has flown by so much. But we want to thank you for coming on, and sharing some of your life stories with us. And your friends Cicely and Peter have come on and shared a little bit of behind the
guys.
scenes with you.
Thanks for talking over secrets.
So thank you all as we wrap up this interview with Charlie Pyle. Up and on, my brother. Up and on.
On.